Welcome to the Scaling Tech Podcast, where we help you manage your growing engineering team. Through expert interviews, we help you navigate the challenges of leading, hiring, growing, and nurturing your tech team to deliver the value your customers demand. Brought to you by AgilityFeat.com, experts in staffing engineering teams in Latin America for clients globally.
I'm Aaron Syme, host of the Scaling Tech Podcast, and I'm here with Mariana Lopez, Chief Operating Officer at AgilityFeat. And in this video, this will be our complete interview, just talking about nearshore software development in Latin America. This will be going up on the Scaling Tech Podcast YouTube channel. As with the other complete interviews that we're doing for a special episode of the Scaling Tech Podcast about nearshore software development in Latin America. So to see that edited podcast with interviews with multiple guests, make sure to follow the Scaling Tech Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice, including on YouTube. And then this video will be my complete conversation with Mariana. So Mariana, thanks for joining me. Let's start by having you introduce yourself a little bit, your title, and then tell us a little bit about your career path.
Great. Thank you for having me on the podcast, Aaron. My name is Mariana Lopez. I'm the COO of AgilityFeat. And just to tell you a brief history of my career path. So it all started when I did computer science in La Universidad de Costa Rica. After that, I really like computer science. I felt that there had to be a better way to get requirements and to work with clients. And so I found my master's in human-computer interaction, trying to put users at the center and make that process a little bit more collaborative, a little bit more visual. It always felt like engineers were in a dark room and they were given like really weird requirements and nothing really matched. And so I wanted to change that. After my master's, I went back to Costa Rica and I started working with you and with David. Initially, it was very much an informal agreement, a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there. We started doing some nice, interesting projects. I remember our first project was building a retrospective tool for Agile. So that was for me a great way to get familiar with Agile methodologies that I wasn't so much familiar with, but I was working as a UX designer, worked with a really good product owner, and learned a lot from you on like software practices and Agile development, and I loved it. It changed a lot what I had seen in uni, what I had seen in my master's, and it really brought it all together. I continued doing UX and UI, but I sort of wanted a little bit more power. And so I started asking for more of a Scrum Master role or a project manager role. At the same time, I was still doing some UI consulting and some UX consulting, and that really brought me into being able to do research and understanding a little bit more of the user's mental model and bringing that back into what we were doing. It felt like at that time we were doing very small MVP phase projects at AgilityFeat, and we were really, it was really exciting because we were working with startups. We were but there lacked like a maturity of being able to bring in that like long research or that UX or the more complex challenges. And I feel like that's something that has really evolved together. Is now we are able to do a lot more complex projects. We bring in all that UX, quality assurance, as well as everything that we were doing in the first place, which is, the development, the engineering. And so that's when you challenged me. I really feel like I was in a great, comfortable position and I was willing to stay there. We were doing nice projects, challenging. And you said, would you like to build a product? And I was like, I'm not sure I could be like the full-on product owner of something. But we did, and it was a lot of fun. Simply Doc. And we also built in some internal tools. That was a learning experience because it really taught me that we are amazing at software development, not to like be too forward with what I think of what we do. But that there's a lot more that goes into product and, selling, finding the right partners, being able to understand your market, where you want to focus your energy on. And although I would call Simply Doc a success because we were able to find a market, we were able to sell it as a licensing platform, and it's still used today. It also taught me, B2C, involves a lot of marketing, involves a lot of like being there for the customers. And so we traditionally deal a lot with B2B. So it just changed a little bit the landscape of what I thought was software development and where I wanted to focus my energies on. And from there, there was a time where, again, you asked me, would you like to be the COO? Would you like to manage our operations, our clients? And that was really exciting because we were at a moment with AgilityFeat and with WebRTC Ventures that I could really see a lot of what was happening, but I couldn't see like the whole thread going across the company. And it was really interesting. In the beginning, I felt a little bit like I was learning, like I was getting some challenges, looking into, budgets. How do we hire? How do we make sure that we're still profitable? What are some of like the legal landscapes of hiring in Latin America? What does it mean if somebody is like a contractor or a full-time employee? And all of those nuances that, were completely not in my perspective or anywhere that I was interested on. And, challenging, but also fun. It also gave me, a way to like think about how can we build culture. Once I looked into the budget, could we do different events? Could we do different ways to bring in some of the developers, some of the QA members that we're remote, and that also has its own set of challenges. And it's been so far fun. I can't wait for the next set of challenges that we find together as part of AgilityFeat. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's been, not only has it been well over a decade since we started working together, it's almost to the point where I have to say it's been nearly 15 years that we've been working. It's been a while that we've been working together. And, not only were you, really one of the very first team members in the company, but now obviously an incredibly important part of the leadership team. And so I appreciate that and everything that I've learned from you, and everything you've brought to the table on that UX and UI and customer perspective, as well as just your general leadership skills in the team, and client management abilities is something that you've always excelled in, and why it was always easy to kind of try and challenge you with what would be the next step. So I think, it's been definitely an interesting journey for us working together in AgilityFeat and WebRTC Ventures. And as you said, we've done a variety of B2B, B2C type of work, both ourselves and for our clients. And the sort of central theme of all of that, perhaps for us, is that our sweet spot has always been about building development teams in Latin America, whether that's for building a video application or as part of a staff augmentation project for a client in the US. So what are some of the best practices that you've learned over the last decade plus about working with remote developers in Latin America? How would you say a company can best integrate with their remote teams?
Yeah, so I think that there's several things that need to go right. The first one is, and I think it's different if you're building like your own team or if you're building a team for a client. And I say that because the most important thing is understanding if a developer will fit into the culture. And when you're talking about building a team, you're talking about understanding what that client likes and understanding what we like, right? And sometimes those are not the same things, and that's fine, because that's great. You can find the right person for the right team. And so I think that that's the most important. I would say there are some things that across our clients we look for in our developers and our team members because they make a difference. So I think one of the most important things is communication. You would tend to find that with the projects that we work on, they are fast paced, they're challenging, you hit blockers, they're collaborative. And if there's somebody that is just waiting for the scrum master or the project owner to say like, oh, hey, it looks like you're having a trouble, or it looks like you're having issues, or you don't have any tickets assigned, it's not going to work, right? Those people very, very quickly don't make it in our team. We have to have somebody that's like communicating, that's like telling us what are we missing as a team. We're stronger for that, and that's something that I look for in everybody that joins the team. And I also feel like with different time zones, with remote, if you're not able to have good conversations, written conversations, and spoken conversations, it just doesn't work. I think that's our first and main and most important filter. The second one is closely related, but it's being outcome drivers and not passengers. So we'll often see people that are just waiting for the solution and that aren't like challenging the status quo. I like people that drive. I like people that take initiative. They're willing to say like, hey, I know you want this video chat, but what if we did this differently? What if we used this piece of software that's already built? What if your chat was built on an existing library? It'll save us time. You'll be able to validate the idea. And sometimes you're like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted. How didn't I see that? And so we're looking for people that are willing to do that and willing to drive the conversation, drive the initiative, and get us there. I also think that we are looking for team members. We're not looking for resources. I think that that's so important. You'll find a lot of software firms that will say like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll take care of everything. You won't even notice we're here. We're just gonna punch out the work. And like I said, there's space for everybody. That's not us. We're gonna be vocal. We're gonna be present. We're gonna be part of your team, and we feel it. Like as throughout our journey, you grow attached to the products that you work on. You care about them. You become part of the team, and that's I think how it should feel, or at least that's what we're looking for. It makes a difference, right? At the end of the day, if you believe in what you're building, if you believe in the people that you're working with, you're willing to go that extra mile. You're willing to put the effort and the brain power, not only to do your job, but also think what's great for the company and for the client.
I love that. So yeah, strong communication skills, written and spoken, being outcome drivers, not passengers, and then team members, not resources. And that's an incredibly powerful combination, I think. So I like the way you describe that. As you know, I have a personal aversion to the word resources when we're talking about people in a remote team, especially because I think every client wants developers to be more of an outcome driver than a passenger. I think, right? That there's someone who's willing to lead, who's contributing good ideas to the team. Still working as part of the team, of course, but not a renegade in any way. But bringing ideas to the table, right? An outcome driver. But if you treat your remote team like resources, and personally, I feel like when people use that word, that they don't use it with bad intentions generally, but it does convey a message of you're kind of a block in a spreadsheet, you're a financial number, right? And that's not the attitude you want to give, the feeling you want to give someone if you want them to also be an outcome driver in your organization, right? And really bring ideas to the table, just like anybody else in your team, regardless of what country they're sitting in. is going to be. So I think that's a really important combination of things to offer there, and ways to work with those remote teams. Uh, what would you say attracts our U.S. clients to working with us? Like what are they looking for when they go? Maybe if they're from the U.S. outside of the borders of the U.S. and when they're looking at Latin America in particular.
To be fair, they're probably reaching out to us initially because of cost. There are significant cost savings when you hire nearshore developers, but I would hope that people that come to us through references and that understand a little bit more our methodology or our mentality is that we're able to make their vision happen. It's not, sometimes a client comes to us and they're like, this is what I want you to do. And while we're on the rails and on the running, we're like, this was your goal, but we can get to it faster, we can get to it better, and we drive it together. And we've come up with a lot of creative solutions, a lot of good projects that, started off a little bit less ambitious or started off with different ideas, but we're able to achieve that same goal. I think they come to us because we have talented people that are willing to take risks, that are willing to find solutions for interesting challenges, and that are good communicators, that are willing to sit down, brainstorm, think about the different solutions. And it's not just about, here's your set of requirements, here's your code, everybody go home. It's more about building that relationship, building that team, building that trust, and coming up with actual products and actual solutions. And I think that's a really big difference between, other teams that do the same kind of work that we do.
Yeah, and that's obviously one of the big advantages of going nearshore versus a more of an offshoring model of, further away time zones, right? Is that if you want to have that level of collaboration, it helps tremendously if people are in similar time zones to you, at least overlapping time zones, because if you're working with somebody 12 hours away in the day, right, then unless they're working nights, which is not great for them either, then you're almost forced to work in more of a let's throw requirements over the wall kind of way. If you really want that, again, that phrase about outcome drivers, if you want that strong collaboration, strong agile methodology style of interaction, then working with people in the same time zone is tremendously beneficial for sure. What about on the flip side, as we're recruiting developers, designers, testers, anybody in our teams to work with us, and talking about the fact that they're going to work with clients, generally speaking, in the U.S., certainly outside of their home country. What do you think attracts that talent that we work with? What attracts them to working with a U.S. company?
Definitely. There's several things. I think we're competitive in terms of salary, which is also great. We are also, I think, we present them with interesting challenges. Sometimes in some of these countries, all the software developers or all the QAs, they work for the big bank or the big finance company. And so there's not a lot of diversity in where they can focus their energies and their talents and their learning and growth path. So I think when we come and we interview, they're like, what kind of project can I work on? And that's always fun to see, because the kind of people that we want to attract and the people that come to us are looking for that extra challenge, or looking for that different kind of flavor. I also feel like they stay because we foster a culture of belonging and being part of a team, and there's open communication, as much as possible, a flat feeling of hierarchy that I think is very attractive to software developers and people in engineering in general, and no fluff. I would say it's not about the pizza parties, but more about the big things. My work is nice, and I come to it, and I can do interesting and fun things, and I'm well compensated for it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm in Panama City, Panama, as we talk, and outside of my window, I can probably see 100 banks here, right? So most of the developers, here in Panama City are probably going to be, have at least some experience in banking, and it's not to say there's anything wrong with the fintech industry, of course, but if you're working for a traditional bank in Latin America, you may be limited in the sorts of technologies that you're working on. You're certainly not getting experience of English speaking client facing, which is valuable to people sometimes too, right? Yeah, because lots of people in Latin America are educated in English through school, even in primary school, but to have the experience to the opportunity to really use that in a professional setting is, of course, a whole different growth opportunity in that foreign language, and so something that people find attractive, as well as growth opportunities in the technologies that they work with too. And I think that it comes back to those things too that you were talking about, of how if both we as a company at AgilityFeat, when we're recruiting and working with teams in Latin America, as well as our clients in the US, if they're also thinking the same way, that this is my team, this is my talent, this is not a bunch of resources, these are not passengers on the journey just fixing bugs in production, they're outcome drivers, right? If we are if we're all collaborating within our technical teams that way, regardless of their location in the world, then that's going to attract them, you know, to work for us at AgilityFeat, but more importantly, to work with our clients and to want to stay with them too, right? Because technology is certainly a field where if people are not don't feel like they're growing and learning, they're going to move, right? It's a very important part of the overall compensation to technical talent, that they feel like they're having those technical growth opportunities as well. And so it's an important thing for clients to consider too. And it's another part of that team members, not resources mentality, right? That just like your internal team in the US, you want to help them feel like they've got a growth path, technically and in their career. And that's true also when you're working with someone in another country, regardless whether they're a contractor or employee or any of those other sorts of status. It's more just about how they work within your team day to day.
I forgot one last thing, which I just thought it's relevant. It's the landscape has changed, but I think one of the things that we did is we figured out how to make remote work and how to make a culture around people that are remote. And I feel like that is always very refreshing. That feeling that, it's not just something that somebody forced you onto. Now, a lot of companies do remote. They're kind of afraid that might go away, but we've learned how to bridge those gaps, and it's in our DNA, right? We've always been remote, and we've always made sure that relationships can grow, people can express their concerns, and I feel like that's one of the things that we still do really well. Is it doesn't feel like it's a distant team. It's still a very close team, even though we're all in very different parts of the world, of Latin America. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's incredibly important. So many people do take it for granted these days, of working in a remote or a hybrid environment. You and I have been doing that since 2011, 2012, long before, pandemic forced so many companies to consider that model. And even now, as some companies are reconsidering that model and encouraging some people to go back to the office at least part-time, I think that it's still incredibly important, especially when you talk about a global workforce, that you're able to not only just support or accommodate a hybrid workforce, a remote workforce, but that you're really encouraging it and nurturing it in the same way that you would, people who were in the office before, because that's going to be really important. So yeah, that's one of the nice things about, generally speaking, most of the places that you and I have worked in Latin America with you as clients are places that it's pretty easy to travel to, right? We've been able to meet with clients in Costa Rica and Panama before, so it's really nice to be able to build your team in a place that you can also get together with them occasionally.
Exactly. Yeah. definitely.
So as we near the end here, what would you say is the most common mistake that clients make, when working with a remote team in Latin America or more broadly in that? What should they look out for?
I think one of the most common mistakes the clients make is thinking that all nearshoring firms are the same, and thinking like, oh, I'll just go to the one that offers, the best rate, and they often come back. And I love that we've had some of those experiences. I'm so sorry for the clients that came back and they're like, this is unusable. I need you to start again, or can you fix this for us? And we are like, yes, we can, and we will. And we sometimes have to say like, hey, no, we have to start over. And it's sort of that feeling of like thinking that just because the model works and they've seen it work, sometimes it will work for them if it's not mindful. Like I said in the beginning, when we meet with a client, we try to understand what they like, what they don't like, what are the kind of talent that they need, and we try to push it forward. And sometimes when you think of like staff augment, you're like, it's just the person that I got. But often behind the scenes, it's the little Slack messages from me that are like to my team members, hey, remember, we want you to be prepared for demo. We want you to do this, and some sort of some guidance that we do behind the scenes, additional resources that they have, like trainings or templates that we use. And that often sometimes is behind the scenes to the client, but it makes all the difference. So I think that's like a mistake, is like not seeing what's behind the curtain, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, as you said earlier, cost savings are an important part of the equation when working with a nearshore team, working with a global workforce in general. But yeah, to the point you just made, I think it's important that they're not the first thing, right? That's part of the equation. Maybe that's how the CFO gets interested in this concept initially. But if you really want to make it successful, you have to look at a lot more than just cost savings. Otherwise, you end up in kind of a race to the bottom financially. And for companies that emphasize only price, or they emphasize that as the primary reason, it's an indicator perhaps that they're sacrificing other things in order to make that equation look better, right? And it's got to be a balance, right? And even within the same nearshore team, you don't always have the that same you won't have that necessarily that same savings with each individual, and so you need to be kind of available, open to that, in order to build a team overall that really works well for your organization and is helping you to move your application further ahead and being really strong contributors. So yeah, so I think that's really important. All right, so kind of last question, Mariana. If a potential client of ours is watching this, is there anything else that you want them to know, or is there anything else that you wanted to address in this conversation that we've skipped over?
No, I think if I could tell a potential client, is we really like building good quality software. That's the difference. You will receive pushback if you have ideas that are not great. But we will be passionate about building great quality products.
Yeah, that's great. That's the way it should be. So yeah, our ideal clients like that and appreciate it. They're even looking for a team like that is going to challenge them in a positive way, of
In a
course.
positive way. We're all very nice.
Exactly. Excellent. Well, Mariana, thank you very much for sharing some of your insights with us today. I appreciate it. As always, it is a pleasure to speak with you. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and I know our clients feel the same way. So thanks for taking the time to share a little bit of your expertise with us today. And again, for those of you watching this is the complete interview between myself and Mariana Lopez about nearshore software development in Latin America. And we'll also have excerpts of this in a upcoming podcast episode on the Scaling Tech podcast about nearshore software development in Latin America. So subscribe to the Scaling Tech podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, the platform of your choice. Check us out also at scalingtechpod.com for more information about the podcast and that episode and our other guests in it as well. So thanks a lot for joining me today.